You are listening to CapConversation, the digital discourse of financial services today with Capco and guests. I'm your host, Audra Schoenfeldt, Head of Strategic Analytics for Capco US. Today in this podcast, we're going to be talking to Christian Barrera, VP of Alliances and Ecosystem, and Rabih Ramadi, Head of Financial Services for Unqork, the leading enterprise no-code application platform. Welcome, Christian and Rabih. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having us, Audra.
To start us off, would you both tell us a little about yourselves and your journeys to Unqork? Rabih, let's start with you.
So before Unqork, I was a partner at KPMG in the consulting business. I ran the capital market vertical and led Goldman Sachs, which was the firm's biggest financial service account. Wanted to move out of consulting and be part of creating a new company, new technology. Met Unqork when the firm was only 7 people. Get excited about the vision of Unqork, and I made the move almost 3 years ago.
My name is Christian Barrera. I'm the VP of Alliances here at Unqork. I joined Unqork in March 2019. There was probably about 40 people already here. A good friend of mine from university had started working here and introduced me to Rabih, and we had a conversation and actually kicked it off. Prior to Unqork, I was aware of Gary Hoberman, our CEO, because when I was at IBM, he was a client of ours. And so obviously I'd interacted with him a couple of times there. And I'd been tracking sort of the progress of Unqork over its, at that point, 2.5-year journey and saying, wow, if they could really unlock the power of the enterprise and kind of free it from the legacy, that's a really huge opportunity. So I was excited when I got the chance. Prior to joining Unqork, I worked at IBM for 11.5 years in a variety of sales and strategy roles. I also helped launch IBM Watson and blockchain. And immediately before Unqork, I ran pre-sales at a small machine learning boutique platform company. And so had a really strong sense of kind of what it would take to hit the next inflection point for a high growth startups, and really wanted to participate in what Unqork was doing. So it's been a wonderful ride since.
Thanks for that. And we're certainly glad you both found your way there, because we'll get into the discussion today. But certainly Unqork has had an amazing trajectory, and the journey with Capco as well has been quite enjoyable for the past 18 months or so. So on that note, Unqork, as we've been talking about, was founded only in 2017. And I believe you just announced your achievement of unicorn status with a $2 billion valuation coming out of your latest funding round earlier this month, which is really quite amazing in such a short time, as I said. Can you tell us a little bit more about the company's background and mission, and what inspired you both to become a part of the Unqork team beyond the building a product, which I think was a great comment from earlier?
Sure. I mean, we started the firm focused on the fact that technology became so crucial to every company's business in financial services as well as outside financial services. And we have all worked in technology with these various big companies. And we have observed that the technology development process is not as efficient as it could be in the market. So we built Unqork to solve for building scale in automation and digitization of technology. And the value proposition we brought to the market is, one, a much quicker time to market when it comes to technology development. 2 is really significantly reducing the cost of developing technology and maintaining technology. And the third one is building way more flexibility and agility into changing platforms after they go to production to keep up with business demands. This is how we started the company. This has been our focus from day one. And this is the reason we've been super successful in the industry, and we've been growing really quickly, even though we only started the firm in 2017.
Yeah, I'll build on that. I mean, selling into insurance, financial services broadly, other industries, you walk into these firms and they're spending billions of dollars in technology. And even with that, their technology is inflexible. They're still doing manual processes. You see this, and when you kind of unpack it and you dig under it, you realize that a lot of this money is being spent maintaining that legacy and that infrastructure. And a lot of what Rabih's talking about is about kind of freeing people from that legacy so that they can continue to innovate. so that they can introduce products quickly, so that they can react to that evolving regulatory environment that's kind of shifting on them constantly, in a fast way. And then all of a sudden, now you're still technology enabled, you're still digitizing the process. The problem with that existing technology spend and that existing technology investment is that it creates a lot of inflexibility and it creates a lot of stuff to maintain. And what we're trying to do is say, hey, we can still do the software development lifecycle. We can still do all these things, but at an accelerated pace, because you're not writing code, because you can maintain these apps quickly and at lower cost with fewer people because you're not writing code. And it's really the promise of what we're doing, to be able to kind of really deliver on the promise of IT that's sort of been lagging for the last 25, 30 years.
I think that makes tons of sense. And your point on technology becoming so crucial to company business, I mean, that's obviously not something to be taken lightly. And I think the concept of, enabling through platforms and tooling, the ability to do more of that hands-on development for people that were previously, I'm assuming, not, developers. That's a bit of the point of the no-code platform. Not only, I'm assuming, allows for companies to, leverage their existing employees or upskill them to do things that they otherwise couldn't have done previously. And to your point, keep a faster pace on being able to introduce more digitization and automation without it having to be, a huge lift to get to some of those needs from a fast moving forward in technology standpoint. And I think from my end, what I liked about it when I learned about the Unqork side was, allowing someone to help with, development who is not a developer, or the citizen developers, I think have been describing it with many of our clients today. Makes a lot of sense and allows people to evolve with the times in a more organic way as well. From my end, coming on the analytics end, there's a lot of tooling out there now to try and, enable data science for the non-data scientists. And I think it all just speaks to that trend about finding ways to help people do things that previously required a lot of specialty and, unique skill sets.
One thing I'll tweak in that statement, Audra, if that's okay, is I think absolutely there is an opportunity for that expert in the product or that expert in the business process to contribute in a meaningful way. But one thing that we've observed, and I think one of the differences between our story and other people who kind of lay claim to this no-code space, is we are still very much in the enterprise software development game. We still have to think about security, performance, auditability, all these things at scale. And there is still absolutely, one of the reasons that I think I appreciate our relationship with Capco so much, there's still absolutely a need, not just for that business subject matter expertise around the products, processes that we're digitizing, but also the architecture know-how to properly do an integration. Even though we're doing it without writing code, you still need to think about how to do this in a performance, scalable, secure way. And there's still a role for both those actors. I really think of Unqork as a place where those people come together. So much of the historical development and IT process is somebody laying out some requirements to some guy and to some team in IT or some development team, and then going off and doing something sort of off in a silo and coming back, and you're hoping that you didn't fall into a game of telephone. So being able to kind of merge those people and have them collaborate, and again, Unqork operating almost as a place where these people come together, will lead to a better result more quickly. So it's really about that interaction between those groups as opposed to one over the other, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, thanks for that. And I think that's a great point around, we're not the same concern around allowing automation technology. Is it going to replace the workforce? The answer to that is no. Here, the no-code, that's not to replace or not have a need for the workforce together, but being that place that people come together. And I think your key point on it being, scalable is one of the most critical elements in the ability to maintain it, because so much of the effort to put in technology feels like it's flat and then becomes stagnant in a hot second. And some of the points you made about how Unqork enables that in a better way make a lot of sense from my end.
So many of these processes are manual, even when there's a technology solution. And it's because, the technology wasn't built to serve the purpose, or it missed the mark 10%, or requirements changed and the changes are in a backlog. And so you end up kind of covering that up with manual processes. And So like having those people together and actually looking at and working from the same thing is actually probably really important in this world when you think about it.
Actually, the manual point, I think, is an important one as we get into maybe kind of a little bit deeper dive about what that really means in financial services. Because I certainly know for myself, I definitely had the perception before I worked in the industry that, oh, surely, banks have it all together. But right, there's a lot about what they do big and small that is surprisingly nowhere near as sophisticated or automated as one would expect for everyday processes they would need to do for operations. So as we think about the world of financial services a little bit deeper, Unqork and Capco have worked together quite a bit in wealth and asset management historically. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about the history there and where you see the financial industry going in terms of more future trends, continuing to marry technology like the Unqork no-code platform. And as you look more broadly into the ecosystem of financial services like capital markets, banking and payments, et cetera.
Yeah, I would say we started working with Capco as both companies really early stages, like maybe a year after we started the company, and we hit it off really quickly. I think because we share a lot of the same value, the entrepreneurial culture, understanding of the digital trends, and most importantly, our focus on clients. So in the asset and wealth management space, we both seen the industry, and historically the industry was focused on returns, and only focusing on returns to build a business in asset management is very hard now because it's hard to differentiate that. So a big focus has shifted to client experience, which means how can you get clients quicker onboarded quicker, how can you service them better to build a stickier business with them, and at the same time, how can you reduce the cost of your infrastructure and back office to basically adjust for the shrinking margins on the assets you're managing as a company? And that's the value proposition we brought with Capco, because we have deep experience in digitization in when it comes to the client lifecycle, when it comes to back office automation. So we provide the platform that can solve for these issues, while Capco is providing the subject matter expertise, the implementation expertise, the architectural expertise to build solutions on top of Unqork that will bring the values that asset and wealth managers are expecting. And to your point on the expanding ecosystem, definitely we see an expanding ecosystem in financial services where asset managers, wealth managers are also expanding their businesses and offerings in areas that has overlap with capital market, banking, and payments. And this is where our integration capability becomes really important, because we have what we think a unique integration capability that allow us to integrate with the ecosystem of things like payments or banking, where we can integrate with leading service providers and bring end-to-end solutions, in this case, to our clients.
That makes sense. And out of curiosity, when you look at the mix of where Unqork has had the greatest success in financial services from a domain perspective historically in the future, do you think the mix of what it is today will continue to evolve? Do you think there'd be certain areas within capital markets versus wealth and asset management or banking payments that would end up being the leader where it's applicable, or it's really consistent across all?
Yeah, I mean, overall, I think there is more and more similarities and conversion between capital market and asset and wealth management, just because they both are built on the concept of trading. They trade with each other's. We definitely see more and more opportunity for common infrastructure linking the buy side and the sell side. We see a big appetite on the buy side, on the asset and wealth manager, to come up with common solutions across the industry, whether rather than each of these companies trying to build their own solutions. So we see a growing ecosystem of also service providers for these industries. And some of these leading service providers are using Unqork to build solutions that can service whether the capital market or the banking or the asset management industries. So definitely we see that as a big trend. And the other key theme across all of these three trends is the connectivity. Any solution in the market to be viable has to be connected to an ecosystem of service providers and banks and asset managers. And this is again where Unqork's integration capability is crucial to basically ensure these connectivities.
I would also add that I think one of the things around Unqork as an enterprise software development platform, it has very natural affinities in certain areas around asset and wealth, around onboarding, account servicing, and the like, right? But as you look beyond that, right, our platform should be extendable and flexible to serve a variety of use cases across retail banking, capital markets, and all these places. Part of this is we're going to, thanks to leadership from Rabih and some of the folks on his team, push out a point of view that says this is how you use Unqork to solve, this category of challenges. But one of the opportunities that we have with Capco is you guys may be working on other aspects of workflow and digitization opportunities that we may not have the expertise on. You may say, hey, here's a really great way to apply Unqork to solve these 2 or 3 problems that we're not even contemplating. And the pie grows, right? Not just for Unqork and Capco, but for the industry, of where we can start applying some of these workflow digitization capabilities, some of these customer capabilities, customer experience capabilities in a broader way. And that's a lot of what we're trying to, and as we start integrating more third-party data services, have more folks such as yourselves with deeper subject matter expertise, the use case universe of stuff that Unqork can be used for will continue to grow and expand. And that's a really unique opportunity for us and for the industry overall.
Thanks for that. I think the comment on, you're right, workflow digitization, those are quite significant words for certainly our view in the world of financial services, particularly as I think to the comment earlier, when we think about where the financial services industry is going in terms of a lot of its trends when it comes to operations, the next gen ops transformation, and using the best tooling to be, as buttoned up as possible on what a workflow is. And that doesn't mean replacing all of it with things like automation, but it does mean being very robust and understanding what that process is, having in place, tooling like Unqork to make sure that where you should be able to make it, digitized and scaled, it's done in the right way. And then having an ability to kind of keep at scale monitoring on what your processes are, which you can do through other types of technology as well. So I think that concept of workflow and the digitization journey has a lot of movement still to come in financial services for sure.
And if you think about it, like the whole concept of workflow automation, obviously is not new. Like I've been in the industry for 20 years and it was always a big thing in the industry. Historically, it didn't work because of the technologies available to at that time. So the key thing with these technologies to work, one, a workflow will have to have an integration capability with an ecosystem. Two is it has to be incremental. If you want to try to digitize the whole workflow of a bank with a big bank approach, it really doesn't work. So the incremental nature of the digitization and the integration capability is what we think is going to be critical for this project to be successful.
Absolutely. And I think the comment you made earlier too around how Unqork allows flexibility so that, if you set up the best possible workflow today and those needs continue to change, it's not like moving mountains through something that was set up as that's the system, and the ability to be flexible sounds like with Unqork it's a little bit easier to do over time if those needs continue to change in the workflow.
That's a very good point, because even if you build the best solution, whether it's a workflow or any solution in financial services, as we know, especially on the capital market and asset management side, things change quickly. Even banking, new regulations, new product mixes, new type of clients, new client preferences. Unless you have the flexibility to keep on changing the system you're developing in a way to keep up with the changes, these systems become obsolete very quickly. And that's the value we bring, which is the capability to, through visual configuration, to keep up with these changes and get these current and make the system always current in terms of meeting the business requirements.
Absolutely. And actually, I think that's a good lead into kind of another direction. I want to talk a little bit more about some of the work we've done and more from a use case standpoint, which is, we've talked about such fast-paced movement in technology and innovation in the market, and how it seems also impossible to keep up with the pace for finding and building the next big idea or making sure that your technology and infrastructure moves at the pace your business needs to. And so as we think about all this, we'd be remiss to probably not mention how COVID-19 has made some of the needs for innovating things we didn't even know we need before we had needed them move as faster than ever before, I'd say this year. So from a Capco side, our digital team has a dedicated innovation lab, which you've had firsthand experience working with as well. So can you talk in a little bit more detail about maybe some of the work that the Capco and Unqork teams have developed with that lab and the impetus for that from a use case perspective?
Sure. I mean, this, by the way, the Capco Lab is just an amazing place to experiment. I would say the next wave of products in financial services, because I think you guys have people who really think of the future of technology while also understanding really the industry. So we have done a lot of really interesting stuff with the Capco Innovation Digital Lab. One is something we did. You mentioned COVID. When COVID happened, there was, as you all know, a big rush into issuing PPP loans in the market, coming up with basically the forgiveness application for these PPP loans, the mortgage forbearances. So all of the stuff was something we built with Capco within the digital lab. We built some pretty interesting products that basically Capco built them on top of Unqork and launched them in the market to service the clients. So this is one area that is that happened recently. Also, we're working with Capco on a number of ideas in terms of how to build applications and platforms that are going to be cross products. So think of the large banks, asset managers. They have tons of products, whether it's within wealth management, asset management, capital market. Within each of these divisions, they have a lot of products that they need to digitize. And one of the challenges in the market now is typically when you look at the solutions in the market, they are very product specific. So I have a solution that can digitize mortgages, or you have a solution that are only specific for loan origination. The great thing with Unqork is we can be the platform across all the products of a bank. And we're spending a lot of time with Capco to see how we can build these products in a way that can be, these applications in a way that can be product agnostic and used by companies across their different business lines.
That makes tons of sense. And I think one of the points you commented on, which I think is key to highlight, probably one of the advantages of Unqork as well, is the lab setting and the work that was done on the mortgage forbearance after the PPP loan movements from COVID. I think I was aware of the timeline that you guys turned that around in, but it was really quite short. And that was not just a artifact of it happened to be, in our lab setting, we had tons of resources, but the speed to which we were able to use Unqork to create that solution was quite short. I think it was a matter of, not even weeks. It was more like days, if I remember correctly.
That's correct. I mean, it was the market conditions were not obviously were not anything close to normal, but you guys managed to build the application in a couple of days and production ready. So these were not prototype application; they were production ready. They were used in the market in a production capacity with heavy volumes of applicants at that point of time. So. And that's the advantage of Unqork, even in a crisis management situation or to launch new products and experiment in the market. You can literally launch a product in a couple of days if you want to. And we did that with Capco in the case of these COVID-related apps.
Yeah, and I think COVID was probably just an opportunity to accelerate trends that were already happening, right? Like nobody wants these manual processes. Nobody needs them. But in this late spring, right? If you didn't have a digital option for some of these things, work was just not going to be done. So that created some urgency as well as some opportunity, right? And I think one of the things that ends up working out really well is as you guys have invested over the last 20 months or however long, your capacity to develop it on Unqork, you guys can actually ideate on the fly and build within the platform and actually have things you can show to clients very quickly. And that creates that accelerates sales cycles, that pushes thinking both on the client side and for our collective team. I know we're working on a couple of POC type things together in the market today. And those are, again, it's a couple of weeks. How much of this process can we digitize very quickly? Can we integrate to one or two back end systems where things are very awkward and normally takes weeks, if not months, to set up. And when you do that and you're able to show people incremental progress week to week and stand something up that's not a complete application, but at the very least a complete thought, in 2 weeks, you really start capturing the imagination and the opportunity in people's minds. And, you're only able to do that if, one, you understand the business, which is a lot of what you guys do, right? And then two, if you have a platform that allows you to sort of turn that understanding into something very concrete and very quick. So, it's been a really wonderful partnership from that perspective. And I kind of view like the digital lab as like, in normal times, right? When we're meeting each other and sitting together again, there's no reason we can't do an ideation session with a client in the morning and turn it into some workflow or some application that they can touch and feel at least the start of in the afternoon. You know what I mean? And then all of a sudden forget the sales cycle. Like, it's not about us selling the platform. It's about the client realizing the value and seeing that value realization in a tangible way very quickly, which is, I think, one of the real opportunities of working with you guys in the digital lab, et cetera.
Yeah, you bring up a really fond memory of, you're right, around, COVID accelerated trends that were already happening. And, I highlighted how fast we were able to turn around the mortgage forbearance piece, but right, the value of the lab setting and using Unqork historically is we want to do things quickly because we have cool problems to solve for our clients. And hopefully it's not always because there's an imminent global pandemic. That was the reason we need to chat with them in the morning and turn stuff around by the afternoon. But that was certainly a great litmus test to prove that it can be done. And hopefully, right, the ones coming up can be for more enjoyable and forward-moving purposes that are self-driven and not reactionary to unforeseen, crazy events in the world today.
Yeah.
And so actually on that, we can kind of end up here with one last question, which is, a lot of what we talk about today, certainly can have global application, but we've been focused predominantly on things that I think we've been working on from a U.S. market. But can you talk a little bit more about some of the future trends you see in financial services and fund for Unqork from more of an international lens as we look to 2021 and beyond?
We definitely are making now a concerted effort to expand our capabilities outside the US. So Canada is already a focus market for us. We already opened our London office in April. And we have also big plans for Asia and Australia. We see the international market as a big opportunity for us and for Capco to help clients. If you think of the state of financial services outside the US, typically the margins are under more pressure in these areas compared to US banks. Typically, these markets are behind on digitization and cloud adoption, but we see that changing in a big way, especially in some of the European countries and also some of the countries in Asia. We see a big push for cloud adoption, for adopting new technologies. So we're getting a lot of demand and inbound demand from companies who want to basically adopt Unqork and deploy them in their local cloud instances of the big cloud providers. And if you think of the scale of the potential value that digitization will unlock in these banks, because of traditionally they did not invest as much in technology, it's humongous. So for us, the international markets are big priority areas for 2021. And we are already working with Capco on a number of these markets as we speak now.
We've been ready for this from a platform perspective, right? The internationalization story around Unqork is strong, right? Data residency, not an issue. We deploy, single tenant SaaS environments with the local cloud providers. So no data residency challenges. Localization and language. We have applications deployed in multiple languages in multiple countries in Asia because we have built-in translation for the platform. Because we think about security and auditability from the ground up, we absolutely have to go and kind of run a checklist against all the regulatory requirements, in every market. But we feel like we've from a GDPR perspective and other things that we're completely ready to go in terms of readiness. So the international, as we look strategically and say, what are the markets that make sense for us? Obviously, the global financial capitals are a big target area for us in general. We have a platform that supports that with kind of, in spite of the fact that we're only 4 years old, right? Where we were thinking about that stuff from minute one. And we actually have some clients deployed in various regions in Asia and different things like that already. So we're ready to take on that challenge and excited to partner with Capco there.
Yeah, one thing to mention, Christian, to your point, we already have deployments around 10 different countries with strict compliance with regulatory requirements. And we have around 8 different languages already deployed on Unqork, where applications are being built in these different languages. And the plan is to expand that very quickly next year.
That's great to hear. And I think it makes tons of sense, especially as we think about the scale of some of the financial services institutions that we work. I mean, they're global anyway, so not all are only in one country. So the ability, and I think the comment you made earlier in our discussion just about how, the value to Unqork being, an enterprise platform that can be consistently deployed across many different use cases would be the tool of choice. When you think about, these types of financial services institutions that are global and the complexity of where they're at with their different countries and their different systems, Unqork can be a thread of commonality throughout all of those because of how you guys planned ahead for its use cases.
It's a really exciting part of the story, to be honest with you. We're really pumped about it. And we Rabih and I in particular spend a lot of time thinking about how to support all the demand we're already seeing in some of the various countries and how to put the infrastructure in place for us to be able to serve it effectively. And it's a big focus for us now and definitely in the near-term future as well.
And it will also come with a lot of close work with partners like Capco that already have presence in these countries.
If we are indeed a global business as well. So I think that's where, we're certainly looking forward to continuing to see and work with you guys where the partnership goes and in a non-pandemic environment as well, as we said before, where we can come up with cool, great things to help clients that aren't necessarily just driven by imminent needs we didn't expect. So I think that will certainly continue to get there, and I've appreciated the time of you both today for us to get to talk a little bit more and learn about Unqork. Okay, thanks so much, and we'll look forward to speaking again.
Likewise.
Cheers. Thanks, Audra.
You've been listening to CapConversation, a Capco production. This podcast is for information only and should not and does not constitute consulting services.